Good afternoon, everyone. This is going to be the presentation for technology readiness. We do have this presentation posted outside on our Avocet site there. If you go to avocet.pearson.com/tx/home, on the left-hand side of the screen, if you select the What's New drop-down, you can find the technology readiness overview, and you can download today's PowerPoint. So again, today's presentation, we do have it posted out here online for you on our Avocet site. On the left-hand side of the screen, under What's New, you can scroll down to Technology Readiness Overview, and you can download the presentation. So let's go ahead and get started. Welcome again, everyone, to today's training. This is the Technology Readiness for TELPAS online testing. And just a reminder, this is for TELPAS online testing. There is no STAR Alternate 2 setup of test sessions. Test sessions no longer are created for STAR Alternate 2. So what we are discussing today applies to the TELPAS administration. And this is what we'll cover: the online testing readiness. We'll also talk about proctor caching. We'll walk you through the steps of configuring TestNav and explain what configuring TestNav entails. We'll also show you how to pre-cache test content. Talk about the early warning system and some troubleshooting steps that you can take. We'll have additional information, and finally our support contact information as well. And when we're talking about online testing readiness, the one thing that we want to be aware of are the different components that make up online testing. And that starts with the assessment management system, Pearson Access Next. This is where your administrators or district or campus coordinators will go in to manage their student data. This is also where the test sessions are created for online testing. And as a reminder, Pearson Access Next, there are two sites for the assessment management system. We have the live or blue secure site, so you'll notice it on the screen here showing a blue banner. Well, we have a training site which will have a brown banner. We're going to talk more about that training site, but you want to make sure that you have access to both sites there, the live secure blue site and the brown training site of Pearson Access Next, and also make sure that you have the technology staff role designated for each of these accounts there. So you will use Pearson Access Next, or the assessment management system here, to enter in the TestNav configuration and also to pre-cache test content. Students will use TestNav to take their test. So the administrator is going to print out a student test ticket. It's going to have their username and password, and they're going to log in to the devices that you've set up for testing. They're going to launch that TestNav app that you've installed, and they're going to take that test for TELPAS. And again, that TestNav is the student test delivery engine. And within TestNav, there is what we call an app check that is used to assess readiness. And it also can test the connection to your proctor caching computer, and we'll walk through those steps here. Also within TestNav, we have the early warning system. So the early warning system will trigger if there was any kind of issues with the setup of your TestNav installation there. So that is TestNav. Again, TestNav is what students will use to take their test. And then we have Proctor Cache. Proctor Cache is the Pearson supplied software that you'll download to a designated Proctor Cache computer, and it works with TestNav to reduce the amount of bandwidth that's used at your school and district. It also speeds up the delivery of test content. So there are a few advantages to using Proctor Cache. And also, when you download or pre-cache the test content, it will be stored encrypted into your local caching computer. And we're going to talk more in detail about proctor caching, TestNav, and also those different tasks that have to be done in the assessment management system. And before we do that, I do want to stress how important communication is for online testing. You as a district technology staff or a campus technology staff, you want to make sure that all of your setup has been completed, and we're going to walk through those steps, including allowing Pearson's URLs through your firewalls, making sure you conduct the app check. Proctor caching, you want to make sure where you're designated proctor caching, if that is going to be at the local school or if it's going to be at the district level. So we'll talk more about the different options you have for proctor caching, but those are things you want to make sure to communicate with your district testing coordinator, who is responsible for making sure that you have an account, again, in both Pearson Access Next and the Pearson Access Next training site. So if you do not have access to either of those accounts, you want to make sure to contact your testing coordinator. And your test administrators, you want to make sure that test administrators are comfortable. They know how to monitor their test sessions, which is going to include resuming the student's test if the student ever exits the test. And they also want to make sure they know how to stop a test session. So along the lines here of communication, you want to make sure you have a plan of action set in place here for your test administrators as far as who is going to be their first line of contact if anything goes wrong while a student is testing. Are they going to contact you at the campus level? Are they going to contact the campus coordinator? Are they contacting the district testing coordinator? When anything goes wrong with students while they're testing online, again, you want to make sure that you've established that communication in advance of testing. So again, communication, very important for having a successful online testing season. So next year, we'll talk about the different four phases. There are four phases here to preparing for online testing. And that first phase is your local bandwidth and hardware verification. So you want to verify the amount of bandwidth that your network is able to withstand based on the number of students who will be testing at the same time. Also, what devices are your students going to be able to use? Are they using iPads, Chromebooks, laptops, desktops, whatever the case may be? You want to make sure that you have that established. And one of the best practices that we do recommend is that you keep a list of those students who are using those specific devices. Again, you want to make sure that you know what students are using what devices. So that's your first phase there. Again, verifying your hardware and gauging your local bandwidth. Next here is your assessment environment configuration. So where are your students going to be testing? Are they testing in the computer lab, in the library? Are they going to be in a classroom? Also, as far as your assessment environment configuration, you want to determine where are you going to proctor cache if you will be using proctor caching. That's a common question that we get. Is it mandatory that you proctor cache? It's not mandatory that you proctor cache, but we highly recommend that you do proctor cache. So in this phase 2 here, assessing your environment, the assessment environment configuration, you also want to again determine where you will be proctor caching, what proctor caching you will be using, if you're going to be using proctor caching at the campus level, at school level, or if you will be doing it at the district level. The next phase here, after you've determined your proctor caching computer, what proctor caching computer you'll use and where you've established where it will be held at the campus or the district level, you'll next enter in the test app configuration in the assessment management system. And we're going to walk through the steps here, but basically entering the test app configuration includes entering the IP address of that proctor caching computer that you've designated. And you're also entering student response file backup locations in the test app configuration as well. And again, we're going to take a closer look at that here in a bit. So that's your third phase there. And the next phase here that we recommend is the infrastructure trial phase. This is basically a dress rehearsal. Remember, we mentioned that we have the assessment management system training site. This is the Brown site. So this is going to allow you to go in and do all of the online testing activities that you would do for a regular test, but you're doing it in a training session or in a training environment. So you can create test sessions, you can configure test nav in the training site, you can even generate sample students in the training site and add them to test sessions. Basically everything that you would do in a live administration, again, you can do it in the Brown training site without affecting any live student data. So then those are your four phases of setting up here for online testing. So let's take a look now. We talked about the first phase there, verifying your hardware. And one of the things that will help you with that is viewing the minimum system requirements document that we have posted out there for you. You can access it through the web address listed on the screen, and you can also access this from the Avocet site. We also have the TestNav 8 online support site that has the most recent updates, and we'll take a closer look at that as well. And remember, for this year, Chromebooks can be used for TELPAS testing. Okay, so again, you'll want to access this document to verify the minimum system requirements. And next here are the headphone and microphone requirements. So listening and speaking for TELPAS, it's new in that for this year, in that it will be given online to students. And one of the requirements is that headphones and microphones are used for TELPAS listening and speaking. So here are some requirements that you want to make sure, if you have not already received or gotten your headsets, you can look at the different requirements listed here. We have some additional headphone and microphone recommendations here. We want to make sure, just a few things here, that the headphones and microphones have clear audio through the headphones. There's no inline volume control or a mute button. A couple of recommendations here for headphone and microphones. And if you have not yet purchased your headsets, we do have a list of those headsets that we found were the most appropriate for these listening and speaking items. So again, we do have a list out here that you are able to find, and you can also find this on our Avocet site. And if you needed to run a test for these headsets, you can do that by, so if you, after you've downloaded and installed the TestNav app, or if the TestNav app is already installed, you'll be able to launch the TestNav app, and on that sign-in screen, you won't even have to sign in. You'll just select where it says Practice Tests, and when you select Practice Tests, the next screen will appear here where you can find the TELPAS headset test and hit Start. And once you select Start, it will walk you through the steps of testing the headsets. So you'll test your headset. It will also test your microphone as well. So again, that's an easy way for you to be able to test your headsets. Again, that's through launching the TestNav app. And you can also run a headset test through the Brown training site of Pearson Access. So remember, we mentioned that there is a Brown training site. So this is what it looks like here. And you notice here up on the very top, there is a 2018 infrastructure trial administration. So when you have that administration selected up on top, you're going to see here displayed under the program information, you have a link here for infrastructure trial instructions. So you can select that, and it will pull up a PDF and walk you through the steps of conducting an infrastructure trial. So within the infrastructure trial administration here, there is a headset test that you can access to test your headsets. Again, those headsets that are going to be used for listening and speaking for TELPAS. So you'll be able, again, to test the connection, the recording, and the audio playback before testing occurs, so that way you can ensure that those headphones work properly. Also, under the infrastructure trial administration there, we have an infrastructure trial test form in there. So that is going to be available. That's available here for you to practice test set of activities. You can create test sessions, assign students, sample students to those test sessions, and you can also test your system configurations. And you can also use this form to have students become familiar with the TestNav system. There's also the tutorial, which we're going to look at here in a bit, but they can also access this if you have set it up like you would a normal regular test session, print out student authorization tickets. They can log in and access the infrastructure trial test. And here is information on the TELPAS tutorial, the reading practice test, and reading release test. Again, when you have installed TestNav on the students' devices there, so here are the instructions, but on the app itself, again, selecting practice tests, just the same place where you go to test the headsets, you can select practice tests and look for the TELPAS tutorial, which is posted and available out there. And again, that's for students to become familiar with the TestNav application and the different features of TestNav. So next here is the TestNav online support site. So at support.assessment.pearson.com, you want to look for TestNav 8 online support, and it will pull up this page here. So this is probably the most important resource for you as a technology coordinator, because this will list all of the updated TestNav system requirements. It will even walk you through the steps of setting up and using TestNav for whatever devices that you happen to be using, whether they be Chromebooks or iPads, desktops, laptops. It will walk you through the steps for each device. It also has the network requirements and guidelines. If you wanted to see a list of the URLs that need to be allowed through your firewalls, you can find them there. your Proctor cache system requirements. If you are curious as to what computer can be used as a Proctor caching computer, you can look at those requirements and also the steps to set up and use Proctor cache. We also have a troubleshooting section that will list different error codes and how to resolve those errors, technical bulletins. We even have some short demos, some short videos under features and demos, and we also have a section for recently updated. So any updates that occur for TestNav, we will have them posted under the recently updated section here. So again, a very important resource for you. You can search for a specific topic by entering the word search in here. And on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll notice here where TestNav can be downloaded from. And you can also download TestNav by going directly to the download.testnav.com site. So when you access that there, you'll be able to see that the download will appear for whatever device operating system that you're using. In this instance, it pulled up TestNav for Windows. So you'll see you have the different options of downloading the TestNav app. You can also download the TestNav app for another platform. This is also where you'll go to download the Proctor caching software. And again, remember, you're downloading the Proctor caching software only on those computers that you've designated as the Proctor caching computer. And again, it's up to you if you're doing it at the campus level or if you're going to do it at the district level. Okay? And you can also, there's also a link here to the system requirements. Also on the TestNav online support page is the TestNav app update process. So if you have the app version 1.6 version, you're fine. Users will see an error message if the testing device doesn't have the updated version installed. And here's the update process depending on the device. So for your Android, Chrome, and Windows Store apps, those automatically update. And for the iOS and desktop apps, those have to be downloaded. The updated version has to be downloaded. Okay, so that's some information there on the TestNav app update process. Next, we have a checklist here that at a minimum should be done as far as your role as a technology coordinator. And that includes, again, configuring your firewalls, proxy server, content and spam filters to allow Pearson's URLs. And again, you can find that list on the Pearson online support site. Again, you want to make sure to identify where your students are going to be testing and the number and kind of testing devices are going to be used. And again, we do recommend as a best practice that you keep tabs of what device each student is using. Next, again, identifying the Proctor caching location and installing Proctor caching software to that Proctor caching computer. Again, you can do this at the school level or at the district level. You have the app check that you can use to test device readiness, and it can also test your Proctor caching connection, and we'll take a look at that here in a bit. Next, you want to make sure any of the workstations that need to be updated are updated. And here is where you will enter in the TestNav configuration in the assessment management system. Again, that's where you'll enter in the IP address of the Proctor caching computer. You'll enter in the secondary response file locations, the port number, and so forth. And again, we'll take a look at that. Okay, and after TestNav has been configured and the test sessions have been created, you want to make sure to be able to pre-cache the test content. So pre-caching the test content is the act of actually downloading the test content to the computer that you designated as your Proctor caching computer. And pre-caching for this year for TELPAS begins next week, I believe on February 19th. Is when you'll be able to start pre-caching the test content for TELPAS. And next year we have the step to conduct an end-to-end infrastructure trial. Remember, you can use the training site, the Brown training site of the assessment management system. And next, you want to plan your technical support during online testing. Where are you going to be housed while students are testing? And again, that communication plan you want to make sure is set. What will your test administrators do in the event that an error appears on the student's screen while they are testing? Okay. Next, here are some best practices for using wireless, which you're able to use, but here are some best practices here. First, you want to, the more wireless access points you have, the better. You also want to try to limit the number of computers that are accessing those wireless access points, and do your best to limit the distance and any obstructions between the devices and the wireless access points. That includes anything like concrete barriers, Anything that may block the signal, you want to make sure to limit those obstructions and the distance, again, between those devices and the wireless access points. And again, we recommend that you run an infrastructure trial so you can test the capacity and performance of your wireless network. We do have additional recommendations posted on our TestNav online support site, which we looked at earlier. Again, these are just some common wireless testing best practices here. So let's take a look at the app check. So after you've installed TestNav on your devices, when you launch the TestNav app, on the right-hand side of the screen, under the user drop-down menu, when you have that selected, you'll see the app check that you can select there. And the first thing it's going to do is ask you to enter in a configuration identifier, or you can click Run App Check to run the default app check. So that configuration identifier there, that's going to let you test TestNav's connection to the Proctor Cache computer. So it's going to, and we're going to take a look at that. That configuration identifier, that code is actually assigned to you after the TestNav configuration is entered in the assessment management system. And again, we'll take a look at that. So here is an example, two examples here of running the app check. And the first one shows here that the app check, and let me make that a little larger here. The configuration identifier here, again, it's optional. The app check was run without the configuration identifier being entered. And here it's showing that it passed both the kiosk mode, which indicates that that device is shut down for testing. And it also tested the connection to TestNav, showing that it passed. So again, that is with the configuration identifier not being entered. And below that, we have the configuration identifier entered in here with the app check being run. And you'll see that not only did the kiosk mode and the connection to TestNav pass, but now with the configuration identifier entered, it also shows you that the Proctor Cache passed, meaning that this device is able to connect to that Proctor caching computer. So again, that is the app check here. And that's just the example of showing, again, the options of having the configuration identifier entered and not entered. So now let's look more closely here at Proctor caching. So again, Proctor caching, it's Pearson supplied software that's used with TestNav, and again, the advantages includes that it reduces the amount of bandwidth that's needed in your schools, and it also speeds up the delivery of the test content going to the students' computers there. So again, you can pre-cache the test content to your local caching computer before testing occurs. And again, this reduces the burden on your ISP. You don't have to constantly download the same test, multiple tests, while students are testing. You can eliminate the redundancy in those requests. And again, when you do pre-cache the test content, then you'll be able to start doing that next week. It's going to store an encrypted copy on your local caching computer, so that test content will be encrypted. And again, we highly recommend Proctor caching. Again, it's not mandatory, but we can't stress enough how highly we recommend that you do use Proctor caching. And here's a diagram to help you understand it a little bit more. Here, on the left-hand side of the screen is Proctor caching not being used. So on the very top, you'll see the Pearson server, and on the bottom here are the students' testing computers. So when the students log in to take their test, each testing computer is individually connecting to the Pearson server to pull the test content through the internet back to their test. So again, for example, if these are all students taking the 8th grade listening and speaking test, they're all pulling the listening and speaking test to their testing computer. Whereas if Proctor caching was used on this right-hand side here, the test content can be downloaded once through the internet from Pearson's server to that local Proctor caching computer that you've designated, so that when students log in to take their test from their testing computer, they're going to pull the test content from that local caching computer. instead of having to go through the internet and pull it from Pearson's server, they're pulling it right from that local caching computer. So again, it reduces the amount of bandwidth that's going to be used at your district, speeds up the delivery of test content. So that is why we highly recommend that you do use Proctor Cache. And if you are going to use it, here's the workflow here to adding Proctor caching or performing the pre-caching act there. Of course, you want to make sure that you have the role of technology coordinator or technology staff within the assessment management system. You also want to make sure that you've designated your Proctor caching computers and you've installed the Proctor caching software onto that Proctor caching computer. Next, you're going to create the test app configuration in the assessment management system. So again, this is the act where you're actually entering the IP address of that Proctor caching computer. You're entering the port number and you're designating your saved response file locations. And again, that communication is important. You want to make sure that your testing coordinators have set up their online test sessions, because one of the options to pre-cache your test is to do it by test sessions. And again, you'll be able to do that beginning next week for TELPAS. So again, here's the workflow of Proctor caching. And again, as a reminder, it's not mandatory, but we highly recommend it. And there are Proctor caching system requirements posted on the TestNav online support site as well. You can find the requirements listed there. And also, it'll walk you through the steps of setting up and using Proctor Cache. And it will, and you can also download, again, the Proctor Cache software from download.testnav.com. Okay, so now let's go into configuring TestNav. So after you've designated your Proctor caching computer, again, you'll enter in some information in the TestNav configuration screen. So let's take a look at that here. In the assessment management system, under Setup, you're going to select TestNav configurations. Then you'll select the task drop-down and select to create, edit TestNav configurations, and then Start. The next screen that appears will be this screen here, where you will enter in your configuration name and your organization. So your configuration name could be your district configuration or your school configuration, and then you have your organization. Where is this configuration attached to? You have the options there to select your organization. Next, we have your pre-caching computer information. So remember, we mentioned that once you've designated your Proctor caching computer, you'll need that IP address of that Proctor caching computer, and this is where you'll enter it. You'll enter in a name of that Proctor caching computer. This could be your library caching computer, room 102 caching computer. It could be district level caching computer, whatever the case may be. But you want to make sure that you enter in the IP address of the Proctor caching computer, and it has to be a static IP address. And then you have the port number, which is 4480. So you want to make sure to enter in those bits of information for your pre-caching computer. And then next we have your response file backup locations. So for Windows, Macs, and Linux, though the primary location of the students' response files are the actual students' devices themselves, is the user directory. And you have here options to enter secondary locations. So for whatever reason, if a student is not able to log back in to their same device that they're using for testing, if they have to move to another computer, those responses are not lost because you've designated a secondary save location. And again, you can find instructions on how to do this or additional information on response file backup locations on the TestNav online support site. So after you have all the information entered in here, you'll select to create, and then that will be your TestNav configuration that you've created there. And again, after you have created your TestNav configuration, you'll be able to see there will now be a section under Configuration Identifier, and you'll be able to see there that it is now populated with that configuration ID, and that's the ID that you can use to run the app check to test your Proctor Cache connection from that TestNav testing device. Okay, so that is how you configure TestNav. Now we're going to walk through the steps of pre-caching the test content. And again, this is the action where you're downloading that encrypted test content to that local caching computer. And you have a couple of options of pre-caching your test content. And again, this is going to be available next week. When you're ready to do that, you can do it by session if you wanted to. You can select here to, under Sessions, on the task drop-down, select pre-caching test content, and it will pre-cache all of the sessions that you had selected on this screen, and it will go through its pre-caching status, starting to download the encrypted test content to the local caching computer. So that's the first option you have of pre-caching. You can do it again by test sessions, or you can do it by test. So here we have the steps here. If under Setup, if you select Pre-Cache by Test, this is where you'll be able to select the test for the content that you want downloaded to that Proctor caching computer. So for example, if you designated a caching computer at an elementary campus, then you'll just have to download the test content that applies to those students at that elementary school. You wouldn't have to download or pre-cache all of the test content. So again, you have multiple options of setting up Proctor caching, but remember that you can pre-cache your tests by session, or you can pre-cache them by the actual test. And once you start pre-caching, you'll be able to see the TestNav Proctor Caching Diagnostics page, which looks like this here. You'll see the different tabs up on top: Tests, Clients, and Settings. Test is going to show you information about test content and the status of the caching. It's also going to show you individual test items, the status of those individual test items, Then you have the Clients tab, and that's going to show you the clients by IP address. It's going to show you all the computer IP addresses that have connected to TestNav, and it will show you details by computer. And then you have your Settings tab. So this is going to be where you'll be able to refresh or reload or even purge your test content. We're going to talk about purging in a bit here, but remember, after test administration has been completed, if you've used Proctor caching in the past before, you want to make sure that you've purged or deleted, removed that test content from that Proctor caching computer. It's just taking up space. It doesn't have to be in there, so you should purge it at the end of each administration. So again, that's your Proctor Cache page, and those are the different tabs on the page. So now we'll talk here about the early warning system and troubleshooting. So while your students are testing, if anything goes wrong, a screen will appear on the student, a message will appear on the student screen, and it will look similar to this, where it may show, please notify your teacher or test proctor, click here. Or the example on the right-hand side here, your test has been saved, please contact your teacher or test proctor to complete the process, test proctor, click here. So you want to make sure that the students should raise their hands once they see a message like this, and they should never click on test proctor, click here. So again, this is where the importance of communication comes into play. If this occurs while the student is testing, what is your test administrator's first steps to do? Because what's going to happen is, after they select that test proctor, click here, they more than likely will receive an error code, so it may be necessary that they're going to contact you as a technology coordinator to determine what they should do next. And we do have some troubleshooting steps here on our TestNav online support site. You'll see on the left-hand side of the screen, if you had selected troubleshooting, it will list additional sections that you can access here, including error codes, finding your saved response files and log files, triggers for the early warning system, even some error messages that may appear while the app check is run, and additional early warning system information here. So for example, if you selected error error codes, it's actually going to have a list of all the different errors that may appear on a student's screen while they're testing. It's not only going to show you the error number and the error message, it's also going to give you additional information and instruction on how to resolve that error message. So again, this is on the TestNav online support site. It'll have a list of all the different error codes, the messages, and how to resolve them. Also on the TestNav online support site, there is a section for troubleshooting for online testing. I take that back. This is actually on the Pearson Access Next online user guide site, which you can access on the web address listed on the screen. So there is a section there for troubleshooting for online testing. So if you run into a situation where you're not able to resolve it on your end and you've exhausted your resources, please don't hesitate to contact Pearson Customer Support. We have a level 2 that are experienced agents who will be able to take these types of phone calls. We do ask, however, that you provide some information or gather these bits of information before you call, just so we can make things run smoother and quicker. And I'll go ahead and enlarge this here. So when you do call Pearson Customer Support, if you have to, we do ask that you gather these bits of information. Well, we'll know you'll be using Pearson Access Next and TestNav. When did you start experiencing the issue? When did that started happening on the student's screen? What is the operating system? Internet browser and browser version you will not use. You should you can ignore that because you'll be using the TestNav app for testing. You will not be using browsers. The student ID number of any affected student, so that would be, for example, the student's PINS number. We'll want to know that information. Also, if there was an error code message, what is the error code and what was that message? We'll also want to know the name of the test. What question was the student on while this started happening? What grade level is the student? What subject is the student in? The test session for the student. So again, you want to gather all of that information before you call or before your coordinator calls, your campus or district coordinator. And also on this troubleshooting screen here, it's going to have a list of the most common issues for online testing. And you'll see an example here. The student is unable to sign into the test. Well, on this screen under the action column, it's going to give you options in which to take here. So you want to verify, first of all, has the test session been started? The next action here is to verify that the student's test status is in a ready, resumed, or resumed upload status. So again, you'll be able to find this on the web address listed on the screen, troubleshooting for online testing. Next here, we have the Texas System Status Check. So this is what you'll be able to run to use to verify that all of our Pearson systems are working as expected. So in the assessment management system here, under Pearson Support, you can select on Texas System Status. And when you click on that, this screen will appear showing you for Texas Online Testing the different groups, including Texas Online Testing, Pearson Access Next, Avocet, Training. So it's going to show here that all of our services are up. If there are any issues, we'll have the issue number displayed here, and if there was anything down, then that number would be displayed here. So again, this will help you determine whether it's a system-wide issue or if it's a local issue. And again, that is the Texas System Status link that you can find on the assessment management system. Okay, so now let's look at some additional information here, and that includes here just reminders on how to put it all together here. Again, don't forget, use that app check to verify readiness on your students' testing devices. Make sure if you're using Proctor caching that you've entered in that Proctor caching information and you made sure that the devices can connect to the Proctor caching computer. Make sure you actually download the test content. Again, pre-caching is going to be available next week. When you do pre-cache, make sure that pre-caching computer is turned on before you start pre-caching the test content. And then you want to account for any last-minute gaps or risks. If there's been any updates, you want to make sure to update those on your testing devices. Any configuration changes, anything at all that may impact testing, you want to make sure that all that is taken care of before the assessment occurs. And again, you want to use that, verify again that Proctor caching is working, and you can use that Proctor Cache diagnostic screen while students are testing, and again, you'll be able to use that to verify that the students are actually connecting and they're able to retrieve the content from that Proctor caching computer. And also, again, make yourself available. Where are you going to be in case of anything happening while students are testing? Make sure your administrators, your campus coordinators, your district coordinators, whoever should be in contact with you, they have your contact information and that you are readily available. And after testing occurs, again, we recommend that you purge the test content from the Proctor caching computer. Again, that's deleting, removing the test content that's encrypted in there, just taking up space. You just delete that. And then we have some optional activities here. If you're going to uninstall the Proctor caching software from the Proctor caching computer, you can do that. Remove TestNav from your testing devices and reverting any firewall security or system configurations as well. And after testing has occurred, you want to, again, communicate with your school and test coordinators to find out what went well, what are some areas of improvement that can be taken for the next year. So again, you will have a lot of setup activities here to do, but don't hesitate to contact Pearson. Again, we do have that TestNav online support site, but if you do have to contact us, you can always submit a Pearson customer support form. We have the chat feature. It's new for this year. You can submit a chat if you wanted to, and you can always call us. If you have any questions or your coordinators have any questions as far as policy is concerned, we do ask that you contact TEA Student Assessment Division at the number listed on the screen, 512-463-9536. Okay, so that brings us to the end of our presentation portion of today's training. I want to thank you all so much for attending.